Right, the Trump successor, if you will, the Trump light who will succeed President Trump, if there is a second President Trump. But Deepak, you have a question here for Pramit.
Yeah. So, sir, I'd like to bring your attention back to the place that Mr. Ramaswamy occupies in the Republican electorate, if you will. You know, he is in a party which is against migrants in the first place, and he happens to be a migrant who's apparently proud of his culture, as he's so, confidently professed time and again. Is this the mainstreaming of Indian origin people in US politics? And if so, how? Because we've seen other candidates of Indian origin as well. How do you understand the Vivek Ramaswamy phenomena?
It's a good question. I think what we have seen is, as has been mentioned, you've seen Nikki Haley, Bobby Jindal, Ramaswamy. Very unusual that it's such a small population, a small migrant population like the Indian Americans, have such a prominent place in the Republican Party, even though roughly 70% of Indian Americans are Democrats, tend to vote Democrat and have traditionally been Democratic supporters. I would argue that, in effect, what you're seeing is a minority space opening up in the Republican Party.
Right.
The Republicans can never get the Black American vote. They get a portion of the Hispanic vote, but there isn't that much space. There's no space in the Democratic Party, if you wish, for other minorities because they already dominate the minority political spectrum. So if you are an Indian American running on a reasonably conservative space, now Nikki Haley, for example, is a more traditional conservative. She's not opposed to immigrants as long as they're legal, for example. Therefore, then you have the Republicans actually then pick on somebody like this and say, look, we're accused of being racist, but it's not true because we have people of color who are supporting us. And these people of color, the ones from India, they imbibe our values, family values, conservative views on the economy, strong sentiments against on law and order and so on. And so these are perfectly good for us. One of the areas, as Sandeep correctly mentioned, that's difficult for these candidates is the Christianity element. Now, Bobby Jindal was a clear convert. He was a lone Indian family living in the heartland of Louisiana, a state that is deeply Christian. So I'm not surprised that he moved to a conversion. Nikki Haley actually has gone back and forth on this issue. She's actually, up to like 2021, her website used to actually say that she was a religious person, believed in God, but would often say that I still continue to see myself as a Sikh, as well as I adopt both my parents' religion and my husband's religion, he's a white Christian. Only recently she's basically said, no, I am for Jesus Christ. But there's a widespread assumption among most Republicans that this is just political, it's not genuine. Ramaswamy's been interested in saying, no, I'm a Hindu. But Hinduism and Christianity have very similar values, so you don't have to worry.
Right. And Justin, you actually made that trip down to North Kerala to Vivek Ramaswamy's parents' home. You describe for us what it was like and how is Vivek Ramaswamy regarded back home in Kerala? I mean, is he suddenly found recognition there because of what he's doing in the US right now?
See, there's a palpable excitement out there. When I went there, it's a small town, and the house itself is about like 100, 120 years between that years. So Vivek's father was born and brought up there. So the neighbors out there, his relatives out there, were very, enthusiastic about it. But at the same time, they didn't want to say something more or say, out of the way or bring too much limelight out there that shift focus from Vivek Ramaswamy's campaign. So they wanted to speak a lot, but they controlled themselves while interacting with us, knowing fully well in this day and age, any video, any slight word or chatter can just move around. So yes, even if you go to the nearby shops that we visited to have some coffee, people out there where they knew that we came here to meet Vivek's family, they were very open, trying to talk to us. They were wishing, they're hoping that, we hope that we get to go to the White House one day. So that kind of excitement was building up among them. At the same time, they were, being guarded against, saying something openly which might harm Vivek's chances.
Right,
So yeah,
right.
it was a memorable trip for sure.
Of course, and Kerala is a deeply political state. I know that you would have picked up a lot of conversation in those chai shops there, in the coffee shops, right, which are absolute dens
That's
of
right.
political debate and discussion. But Pramit, these elections, I mean, moving a little away from Vivek Ramaswamy, these elections are like the rematch that nobody really wanted to see. You have a 77-year-old Donald Trump who's just staying a step ahead of the law, and an 81-year-old Joe Biden. I mean, what more surprises would 2024 have in store for us in the battle between these two very unusual candidates?
Well, while we assume that Trump, the first thing is the legal issues about Trump himself.
Yeah.
While the early indictments that he's attracting are to some degree ideological, if you wish, or ones that will not affect his support base, some of the more damning cases he's facing, notably national security violations, for example, transferring documents to Mar-a-Lago,
Yeah.
giving and even presenting such documents and reading them out to his friends, are more extraneous. These are ones in which he will face problems even with his base. Some of the polling evidence indicates that if he's indicted for national security violations, independent voters are about 20% of the electorate, and even potentially about 10% of the Republican vote will either stay home or vote against him. Which could then make him from being a near favorite to making this a very competitive battle. While he's just one step ahead of the law, Biden looks like he's just one step ahead of his doctor, because he's really struggling
Yes.
at times, mentally and otherwise.
Right.
And the U.S. election campaign is very, very strenuous.
Right.
Young people find it difficult to maintain the kind of tempo
Yes.
that a presidential campaign requires. And for Biden, this will be difficult. It'll even be difficult for Trump as well, but for
Yes.
Biden, definitely. The chances of him making gaffes, making errors, falling
Right.
down
Right.
will be dramatically higher over the next 1 year.
Right.
So you have a kind of a race between these two. One, as you said, the law, and the other one on the health
Right.
side of things, both of which could trip swing votes in the middle, if you wish, in one
Yeah.
direction or the other. And then you can't even rule out the possibility of one of these candidates being forced to step down along the way
Yes.
because of age or legal problems, in which case a third person has to jump in to take their place.
Right.
Either the vice presidential candidates, in which case you could have an interesting case where both the vice presidential candidates will be of Indian origin.
Yes.
Kamala Harris on one side and potentially Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy on the other.
News 9 Plus. Download now.